Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Flux of fluxwithit.com, and welcome to episode number 8 of the Producers Hangout. And I'm joined by my co-hosts here. I'm going to pass it off to Mike, Silent Cypher.
What up, guys? Mike here, patbangers.com, and hope you enjoy the show. Pass it over to Kev.
Hey, what up? Kev here, KevWestBeats.com. I'm ready for another good show. I'm passing it off to Bryce.
What's up, guys? Upright, or Bryce. I go by Upright on SoundCloud. Just a average, everyday beat maker. Hope you guys enjoy the show. Pass it over to Aaron.
What's up, guys? If you can hear me, I'm not muted. Aaron, also go by the name of 25 Keys. Been in the game for about 25 plus years and just happy to be here today. First time in 8 episodes.
Aaron, tell us about some history, because you have some good history. Tell the people. Talk to the people. Get your little 15 minutes.
Cool. All right, well, I'm what's known as a Miami bass producer. I produced with Grammy Award winning Jim Johnson. Started at the age of like 16, 17. We used to DJ in a group called Def, Cut It Up Def. I produced with Dynamix out of Miami, produced with Two Live Crew. The entire Miami scene. I produced with a lot of guys. I just never got the big break. I just decided it wasn't happening fast enough. So years later, they made it, and I didn't. So I just passed along all that 20 years of touching knobs and stuff to everybody who I get a chance to speak to.
All right. So just to hop right in and talk about the topic for this week is we wanted to discuss a little bit about limitations and how they can affect your workflow, be it positive or negative. And so we have a little video that we wanted to show a clip of. I'm not going to play too much because we don't want YouTube to get angry at us. But I do want to show just a little bit here. So this is from a TED Talk, and it's called Embrace the Shake. And let's check this little clip out. If I can play it.
After a few years, I just couldn't stay away from art, and I decided to go to a neurologist about the shake and discovered I had permanent nerve damage. And he actually took one look at my squiggly line and said, well, why don't you just embrace the shake? So I did. I went home, I grabbed a pencil, and I just started letting my hands shake and shake. I was making all these scribble pictures. And even though it wasn't the kind of art that I was ultimately passionate about, it felt great. And more importantly, once I embraced the shake, I realized I could still make art. I just had to find a different approach to making the art that I wanted. Now, I still enjoyed the fragmentation of pointillism, seeing these little tiny dots come together to make this unified whole. So I began experimenting with other ways to fragment images where the shake wouldn't affect the work, like dipping my feet in paint and walking on a canvas. Or in a 3D structure consisting of 2x4s, creating a 2D image by burning it with a blowtorch. I discovered that if I worked on a larger scale and with bigger materials, my hand really wouldn't hurt. And after having gone from a single approach to art.
Okay, so let me get out of this again. So with that being said right there, it kind of got some of us thinking. I forget who it was that originally posted that. Was that Bryce?
Yeah, I posted that.
Okay, so with that being said, what we wanted to talk about was how you get around workflow limitations. How do they help or hurt you? And what is your general way of finding your creativity flow and keeping it consistent? So I want to pass this off to Mike first and just kind of get an idea as to how he feels about that sort of situation.
Okay, you probably know my opinion on this because I mentioned stuff like that in shows before, and I always say less is more. Nice. So you don't need like 200 plugins. Master just a few plugins you have, and you can do everything you want. Of course, if you have like 200 synth, you probably just use them as a preset player, and then not more. You don't discover the synthesis by itself. You just throw in some presets, browsing, but you don't really master the stuff you have. And that's the thing I always see in the Facebook group. I see it when my friends talk about stuff like this. I see it everywhere. It's always like, where can I get this and this and this sound? I don't have it. But most of the time, they actually could have the sound if they would know how to build it themselves. So my opinion is less is more, and I'm totally with. I actually don't know who's the guy in the TED Talk, but I'm totally with him in this topic. Embrace the shake.
Yeah, that's something I think it takes a lot of us. I remember I did a video about this about a year ago where I was talking about gas, and so much of it is true. It's one thing to have a bunch of stuff, but then it's another thing to use a few of them. Like these days, I'm using Machine, Omnisphere Trillion, and Sample Tank. And jumping back forth to Sample Tank and Contact. But to me, that's just the best way to go. You really learn what you have. You get comfortable with what you have, and you use the other stuff when, hey, I just feel like doing something new.
Yeah. I feel like partly part of this TED Talk for me was like, limiting myself to just using specific pieces of gear, because like as like a kind of gear junkie, it's hard to not really, enjoy something new, like a new synth, a new different styles of synthesis, modular synthesis, just hardwired synthesis. So with so many options out there, I like to explore my options, but at the same time, two things kind of jumped out at me. One is just limiting myself to specific pieces, like saying, okay, I'm just going to work with this, or like one program, like Reason. I'm just going to stay in Reason and see what I can do in Reason alone. And then another aspect to me was like, like for guys like myself, I'm not a traditional keyboard player. Like Aaron was playing some keys earlier, sounded really dope. I'm not a traditional keyboard player, so like I look for other ways to be able to play the keys. So there's like a lot of apps and things like that I'll use that basically give me the same that kind of fake the not fake, but give me that give me the ability to do that. So it's like that limitation of me not being able to play the keys, I look for other ways to be able to try to get around that. So that's kind of like two things that kind of jumped out at me. So
now, before we hop over to Aaron about this, I just wanted to. I'm gonna kind of lead him down a path, because he's got some interesting limitations that he's dealing with now that he didn't always have. Because I know that he had moved to New York from Florida, so I know that he's got a lot of really yummy pieces of gear in wait for him down in Florida that he didn't bring with him up in New York. So I kind of wanted to ask him what it was like kind of starting anew without using the gear that he was so accustomed to.
All right. When I first moved to New York, all I had was my MacBook Air. No, actually, a white MacBook Clam in 2007, and GarageBand and Logic 8. And I got pretty proficient with Logic and the jam packs, using that, the 909, the 808 sounds in there. But again, I had somewhat gotten away from hardware. The fact of the cables, I just kind of slowly got away from the hardware. Like I remember, when I first started working with Jim Johnson, I was using, God forbid I say this, Fruity Loops and Sonar. And at the time, this is when he was working with Slip and Slide, and we had a couple of songs that we were shopping with Slip and Slide, and they heard the song but couldn't believe that I was using only software, that everybody was pushing the Pro Tools thing at the time. We had access to viruses, MPC 2000, MPC 60s, but I was slowly leaning toward the software. So fast forward, when I got to New York, I didn't even have a lot of that. Let me go ahead and put it out there. I became a pirate. A friend of mine gave me a couple of sites that I won't mention.
Woo!
But you know, in a short amount of time, I had a plethora of software, and my music just really, I'll be honest, just because I could, I had everything that was out there. I mean, I had gigs and gigs of software. And a friend of mine, I really miss a traditional drum machine. Like I said, my MPC was back in Florida. I'm a keyboardist, a semi-keyboardist. I'm very familiar with my Alpha Juno. That's in Florida. And those were my two main pieces of gear back then, the MPC 2000 and my Alpha Juno. Everything was kind of millied off that. So I've been struggling to not have those. I got the machine, and it was really hard to understand the sequencing aspect of it until I got the iMachine. iMachine opened it up to me, but I was still limited. I mean, it still did limit because, like you said, you know, when I go home, I sit back and I look, and I posted a video a while ago, and you know, I have an MPC 2000, I have an SP 1200, I have a 909, I have a 606, a Triton. I mean, I got a lot of gear that guys say they wish they had, but at the same time, now that I got what I do have now, like for the longest time, it's only been the machine. I had a machine, my MacBook, and the Novation Zio 25th Sim, which is how you know my name, 25 keys, because that's how I learned to play off 25 keys. I couldn't afford a bigger keyboard since my Alesis Q6. I didn't have anything out there, so I became this guy that mastered 25 keys, using even the octa buttons just to run my runs, just hitting the octa keys. But it was because of the limitation. One, when I moved to New York, I was living upstairs in my mother-in-law's house, so I couldn't bring all my equipment up. So I had to really learn to master and mix through headphones, because I just couldn't play. My room had a throughway. Right next to the room was my sister-in-law. Right below was my brother-in-law and my mother-in-law. So I had to mix for 2 years in my headphones, and I got very proficient with the headphones. But then, like I said, I learned to use the that Redline DV monitor, which is simulates using near-field monitors. Pretty good, but it's.
And that's designed for simulating monitors through headphones?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
think I've seen that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, it was pretty good, and it gave me depth, but I never really could get the width that I was looking for. Because again, I was monitoring in headphones, guys. For those that notice, headphones will give you somewhat of a great representation, but that real power that comes from mixing is the width.
The stereo field gets out of whack if you only use headphones. Yeah.
So, exactly. So here I was with great depth in my mix, but when you would play it would sound so narrow in the field. But again, I would just try to over widen it. But that was one of my biggest limitations when I first moved to New York, living upstairs above my mother-in-law. Then it was, again, once I really decided to get back into music, 25 keys, I wanted to, get an 88 keys. Really didn't have the space nor the money. Eventually was able to get the Ultra Nova. I do electro. A lot of my music now has been electro, which is paid homage to the Detroit techno and electro sound. A lot of vocoder. And I didn't have a vocoder. The vocoder that I was using in Florida was a Roland SB350, which wasn't mine. So I didn't have access to it, nor anyone that had access to it. And I happened to just keep searching and met a guy in Germany that said, hey, there's a software out there that once you lay your vocals down, it works great. So I found that, and now it was called Warmberg. For those on PC, that's an excellent plugin. I'm gonna throw a plug of that plugin. That's an excellent plugin by
that's a vocoder?
By Tone 2. It's called Warmberg. It's a multi-effect. This thing is crazy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is crazy. I used to simulate like transforming with some of the gates that they have on this thing. This thing is just absolutely crazy. They stopped supporting for Mac. They didn't go to 64-bit. So once I went to 64-bit, I lost a lot of my plugins. Um, but yeah, I mean, just having access to major studios and limited now back to a bedroom studio. I would say I mentioned it earlier. You know, for everybody, learn a full channel strip. Learn your EQ, what each knob does. Learn what a compressor does. So your limitations will open up. Like my limitations now are probably my kids. That's my biggest limitation.
Yeah, I would say like me personally, as far as the whole subject goes, like I don't have a lot of gear, so it's really hard for me to make music.
Right.
I just don't have enough gear. So
yeah, Ken, you don't have a lot of gear, man.
no, I need more gear because I can't make any kind of music right now because I just don't have enough. So I'm hoping that one day I can get enough to actually make music, but because I don't have enough gear to actually make any music right now,
you can't do anything.
Yeah, I just make sounds because I don't have enough to make actual songs.
You don't have enough gear to make sounds either.
Now, actually, to me, the situation that I'm in now is so much different from where I was when I first started making music. And when I first started, just like most people, when you first start, you don't have a lot of gear, you don't have space. Space is a massive limitation to a lot of people because to have a proper studio and to have, like Aaron was saying, to have proper monitoring, you need certain size of room. You need you need to be able to have a certain amount of volume, and that's not always possible depending on whether you're in an apartment, depending on whether or not you have a sleeping child next to you, depending on, there can be lots of different things as far as a home studio is concerned. But yeah, like when I first started out, I mean, I ran the gambit of small to big and all that stuff, and now I'm at a point where I feel like I have just enough room to kind of do what I've been wanting to do. But to me, the limitations that I try to work within are less about what gear I have and less about what actual opportunities I have as far as sound making and creation are concerned, because as you can see, like I have a lot of good stuff to play with, and even if I didn't have this, software can get you damn close to where you want to be also. I mean, these days you can get freeware plugins that, without using pirating or anything like that, you can get freeware plugins to do pretty much any sound that your imagination is really going to want to take you to.
Yeah.
And if you can't use your imagination with freeware plugins only, then that's something that you need to work on.
That's a good thing. Like I said, I had all those plugins, and I mean, what was it, like 2 years ago, guys? When I went to the IMSTA up here in New York, and I met a lot of the sound designers, and they're regular Joes like you and I. I mean, they get up 9 to 5. This is how they feed their families. And I walked away so upset about what I was doing. I came home that night, deleted everything that I didn't own. And
you want to why don't you let the people know what IMSTA is?
I mean, it's funny because I'm a member and I can't actually remember what IMSTA stands for.
Basically, just to give the gist of it, it's a group, of product producers. Basically, it's anti-piracy. Okay.
International Music Software Trade Association.
Exactly, and a large majority of what they deal with is combating piracy, because, like Aaron says, a lot of the people that are making plugins, that are making sound packs, that are making, the general tools that we use to make music every day that you don't really think about are regular people like myself, actually trying to make a living doing it, and when it gets pirated, it literally takes food out of our mouths. But so he went from having pirated stuff to dropping all his pirated stuff and just creating with what he could actually afford. Did you look for a lot of freeware at that point, or
no? I mean,
what helped you make the transition?
A friend of mine suggested Again, I'm still using just Logic. That's it. Once I got rid of everything, it was just straight Logic. Logic or
Oh,
Garage.
you're breaking up.
How
And
about now?
you went out and bought Logic?
Yeah, I had Logic.
Okay.
So, but Logic, I mean,
I want to. Let me ask you, what made you buy Logic? If you were getting freeware and all this stuff from everywhere else, why did you buy Logic as opposed to just getting like a freeware version?
because I got tired of waiting on updates. When a newer update would come out,
Oh, okay.
updates would come out and be like, oh, find something that you need. Like, oh my God, this is the Arrow 1007 is a Logic mystery, even today. I just really got tired of dealing with the slow hard drive issue. So and the new one will come out and supposedly addressed it. So I just said, let me just buy it. So I bought it. And this was before it was $200. I just, this is like when it was $1,000, full Studio Logic project.
Woo wee.
The whole nine, yeah. So, but again, I had Cubase because I liked the way Cubase's audio editing. I really did love their audio editing. I love their Cubase's sound versus Logic's sound. But Logic had a better factory sound set. That changed, and this will sound like another plug. When people that know me know I plug stuff that I really truly know to get the job done. That same INSTA, I happened to walk into the well, I was there before anybody that day because I had to work. I worked in Manhattan at the time, so I had to go there and get as much as I could in before I had to be at my regular job. One of the first people who were open was Personas, and I walked into the room and asked the guy, well, tell me something about this program, and he's like, well, you're the first guy to come in, sit down, and he gave me a full hour of just one-on-one on what that program could do. I went home that night, uninstalled Logic, and bought Studio One, and been on this for 2 years now. Solid. Like I felt like I cheated on my girl. Like, get out. I met a new babe. It's really
listening.
Yeah.
One thing that I was saying though is for me, it's less about what gear, what plugins, all that kind of stuff that I have as far as limitations. I like to work in time limitations now because I have an extremely busy schedule of different projects that I want to do. So I have to segment myself into so many different ways, let alone the fact that, I'm trying to, not completely neglect my family at the same time. So, I mean, I do eat, sleep, and breathe music and sound, and that can be very taxing on the people around me. So that being said, when it comes time to actually just make music, a lot of what I do is, okay, well, I'm going to dictate to myself, all right, I'm only going to spend a very short amount of time on this drum break and make my drum sound like this, and then I'm going to hurry up and move to this, hurry up and move to that. And while I'm not necessarily rushing the sound, what I am doing is I'm trying to keep a progression. I'm trying to keep I'm trying to make sure that I don't allow myself to get lost in modular time, or don't allow myself to get lost in tweaking this sound until it sounds exactly perfect. A lot of the times it's okay, if this is close to what I want, move on to the next piece, the next aspect of the song, move on to the next aspect of the song, and then once the song is kind of like fleshed out, then I can go back and tweak it, but don't go back and tweak things until I have a more fleshed out project, and then I can kind of force things through, because otherwise what I'll do is I find that as opposed to the opposite of having limitations as far as what gear I have, I run into the issue of I have so much gear that if I wanted to, I could spend 12 hours just sculpting a bass line, and still be using different pieces the whole time, or I could just come up with a drum loop, and I'm like, oh, this drum loop's cool, I want to add some scratches, and then just spend a half hour on the turntable scratching. And then next thing you know, it's midnight, and my wife's mad at me because I didn't come to bed. You know what I mean? So for me, like, I try to work in time limitations now, where I'm like, okay, you know, I wanna get this part of the beat done quickly, this part of the beat done quickly, and then move forward with it. And then I can go, once the beat is just about done, then I can go back and kind of like do interesting things with it, process it differently if I choose to. But I think also that kind of comes along with the better you know your gear, with again, like Kev was saying, you know, learning one piece of equipment at a time, using only a few choice plugins or whatever. You get to know them so well that you can extract what you want from them much faster, you know? So if you only use Omnisphere, you're going to know how to make Omnisphere do exactly what you want, as opposed to scrolling through 1,000 presets.
Good point.
And I think
Good
that's
point.
important too.
Yeah.
Much faster. That's why I should tell people, learn basic synthesis. Basic subtractive synthesis will save you so much time in the studio.
No joke. Yep.
Versus going through presets. Like people, you know, people always make the complaint to people that don't know and say, "Oh yeah, well you're going to spend 3 days on a snare drum if you want to." You guys heard me before in pre-show. I was making a bass line. What I take about 45 seconds to 2 minutes tops. Just playing with Monarch. It didn't take long at all.
I think what that video really brought back to me is, like I say, I mean, going back, remember when we only had one piece of gear. I mean, you were a rapper or a crew, all you had was MPC or SP1200. So you know, which is how we came up with this, speeding up the sample and then pitching it back down, because you only had 8 seconds to spread across 16 boards. A limitation, so you had to embrace it. There's nothing you can do at the time. You know, I was 84 when, you know, I was 18 when the SP12 came out. 18-year-old working at McDonald's, my paycheck was $100 every 2 weeks back then. So, a bunch of us would get together, you know, whoever, I'll be honest, whoever back then, whoever sold a little drugs, they bought the MPC or they bought the SP1200. We sampled, but it was still studio time. So you had to try to figure out a way to create what you heard on the radio with only one piece of equipment. You had to literally think out your plan of attack before you even sat down. You couldn't walk in the studio with like 48, 96 tracks on vocal and cuts. I mean, you only had 4 hours, so you would basically sit down at an MPC and plan out like, all right, I want the intro to be 4 bars. This is the loop I want, and you would spend, even if it, you know, your technique couldn't go faster, you speed it up faster with your hand just to get that entire loop in there, pitch it down, chop it up. You know, you got very creative with one-shots. And we don't, you know, now, like you say, you know, you go on to Facebook and people are like, oh, what can I use to do this? I need another plugin for this. And I'm like,
you don't need another plugin.
Realize what we used to go through.
So I want to show, can I just show something real quick?
Oh, yeah.
So, let's see if I can bring this up. So you guys can see my screen now?
Yes.
So this is just a simple drum loop that I have here, right? And this is one of the things, this is an example of working inside of a limitation that I've started to mess with, that I find really, using those limitations, you start to tweak and find creative solutions to things. Just like when I used to only use an MPC, I got really, really good with the MPC to the point where I could pretty much do whatever I wanted inside of the MPC, even if it wasn't supposed to do those sorts of things. So one thing I wanted to show you is, so I had this drum loop, right? And all I did was just slice it, and it's very simple drum loop. And basically something that I'll do if I'm just playing around is I'll go ahead and find like the snare sound. And then I'll go and just kind of manipulate the, I'll manipulate the sequence that already auto slices along with it, so that it'll kind of like change up your drum patterns a little bit. And this is such a super fast way of working. So if I want, now I have like these 3 snare hits that are going to come in, so it's going to make the drum loop kind of be like just a different break. And basically, I would just make a whole bunch of different patterns like that. You know, I would duplicate it over a few times and then just change different hits you know, and bring them back like this. And so essentially it was a super fast way of me getting variations of drum patterns without having to actually program it. Like, all you would have to do is find the basic kick, the basic snare, move that around really fast, and then you have your skeleton right there. That way, you know, I wasn't spending a ton of time. Like, even though I can finger drum and I can do all that stuff, if I just wanted a vibe really fast, I could do that. And by limiting the time that I have, I started to find other ways of working that were super fast, you know, without getting stuck in a creative rut of, okay, well, if I just work really fast and I finger drum this certain pattern that I'm used to finger drumming, it always comes out fairly similar to the finger drumming pattern that I'm doing. But if I'm slicing loops, and then I can go and manipulate the note patterns, you know, in the same amount of time or less, I'm getting these really creative results out of it that I might not have thought about quite so quickly. You know what I mean? Like, I might have came to that solution later, but because I'm working in a small time slot, I can change things around really fast, and then boom, there you go. And I think that's part of knowing your gear really well too. You know, knowing what little quirks that you have inside of your gear, and then getting the most out of them as fast and as efficiently as possible. You know?
Definitely. Yeah, I was gonna say that. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, go right ahead.
No, I was gonna say that even with like today's DAWs, I mean, you get a DAW out the box like Ableton Suite, and you already have like so much stuff to mess with. It's like, even with today's DAWs, there's like that whole the process of limitation is really like, there's almost no limitations in a DAW, really. I mean, you know, so you have to be able to kind of have the mindset to scale yourself back and say, you know what, I'm just gonna, you know, focus on this or focus on that, and kind of create a limitation for yourself and stick within a little structure, you know.
I actually did that recently. That's why when I'm talking about how I'm using Omnisphere and I'm using Trillion and Machine and Contact, and I had to tell myself that because I'm adding synths on top. I had like 101 free synths, you know, and I'm adding stuff constantly. And I'm like, yes, I love Addictive Keys, for example, but Vintage Keys and Contact works fine, and it's easier to get to. It's easier, it's faster to get to. So why do I need both? You know. Why do I need Addictive Drums, Calm from Reason, Battery, Machine, all the expansions? Realistically, you have more than enough drums out of Machine by itself.
Yes, you do.
So, you hear about guys that say they have 500 gigs of drums. Then you listen to a guy like DJ Premier. DJ Premier, didn't he say his drums are like no, Jermaine Dupri said it. His entire drum library is on like 2 discs for the MPC 60.
Wow.
That says a lot about how spoiled we are.
And I think another thing about just about limitations as a whole is how you set your boundaries will affect what your outcome tends to be. Sometimes, like I was, again, I think I talked about this last time. I am a huge Nine Inch Nails fan as well, and I was listening to an interview with Trent Reznor, and they were talking about how when he would do specific albums, they would always have themes for each album. Like, he would do one album, and it was all just electronics that he had in a garage, and it was like, that's all he would use. He did another album, and it was nothing but software. You know, these kinds of things, to me, help you grow creatively and expressively, because you could sit there and play with, literally, if you have Ableton Suite, if you have, you know, Complete, if you have Logic with all your extensions and everything in there, it is so much stuff that is sometimes it can be hard to find your way, because every time you create something, you're finding a new path, and every time you create something, you're possibly not using what you've already found, become familiar with, and feel that is part of your sound, your being, you know. When I play guitar, there are certain chord progressions that I tend to lean towards. There are certain styles of strumming that I tend to do,
right,
that are me, you know, that inherently the way that I play it's my sound, you know. And if I'm constantly grabbing an instrument that I've never used before, if I'm constantly always just using something that I'm less familiar with, there's less likelihood of me being able to emote on the same level as something that I'm extremely familiar with. So sometimes, you know, I think it's really powerful if you create an entire project using a limited amount of things. And maybe you don't want to limit yourself for a long period of time doing that, but maybe if it's just like, you know, a block of songs here and a block of songs there. So these 4 songs I'm going to only use, you know, XYZ, and these 4 songs I'm going to only use XYZ. And then by the end of that period, you'll have learned that gear so much better that now you can emote on a whole nother level with it, you know, so that if you do come back to it later, when you do want to just take all the shackles off and you do want to go full bore, you now have the ability to emote with all these separate things so much deeper than as if it was just a preset, or as if it was just, you know, something that you're. And this goes for dynamics processing, EQing. This goes for instruments. This goes for the whole gambit, you know.
Yep.
It goes for the whole workflow.
Limitation. What I mean, Ken has spoke on it. I spoke on. What are some of the ways you guys have to embrace the shape?
I think. Go ahead. Oh,
okay. I just want to say, if I find myself limited in stuff that really bothers me, it also pushes my creativity to solve several problems, you know. Like Aaron mentioned before, back in the days when you had like a S900 or MPC 60, you had like 6 seconds of sample time, so you need to find a way to sample as much content in that short amount of time, so people went ahead and pitched up the sample, recorded it, and pitched it down in the sampler later. And that's the same thing here. I hardly ever accept limitations for myself. For example, Machine doesn't have an MP3 export, so I went ahead and I tried so much to find out how can I have my exported WAV files converted into MP3 automatically. So I find out, okay, I can do a script, I can do like watched folders and program it myself. And that's always all the limitations that really bothers me lead into creativity, and I learn a lot of stuff also on my system, not only in the music software. The whole workflow is another thing is that I'm actually working on, and I will do a video on this pretty soon, is I have the aluminum wired keyboard from Apple on my Mac. And in Studio One, you can't use the hotkeys F13 to F19 because it just doesn't recognize those keys. And that bothers me so much. So I found out how to remap those keys, and I will bring up a video during the next week showing you guys how to do it. And now I have like 7 more hotkeys on my keyboards that really enhance my whole workflow, speed up my whole workflow in Studio One. And yeah, that's just what I wanted to say. I just want to give you a quick example.
That's pretty cool. I'm looking forward to that. I'm actually. I don't even have that keyboard, and I'm looking forward to seeing that.
I have a question for you guys. Do you feel limitations actually help you make more music? I remember back. This is like 2009, 2010. I was working with an Alpha Juno, a Trinity Rack, and Sonic EPS Classic, and I found myself making more music then than I did when I had a lot of gear.
My issue is, again, like for me, it's always been about time. It's like everything to me comes down to time, because time management is, for one, I'm not good at managing time. Period. Like that's not my personality. I'm a creative type. I'm not a scheduler. I'm not somebody who plans in advance. I'm somebody who's like, you know what? I just found this sound. I'm going to spend 10 hours on it. So
you're honest about it.
Yeah, and I'll dive deep. But that can be both good and it can be bad. So for me, it's like I kind of have to put limitations on myself sometimes. And sometimes limitations aren't always something that you'll do consciously. Like sometimes I'll do limitations without even thinking about it. Like one day I have my MPC is still hooked up right over here. I mean, you know, like this is the other side of the studio here, and sometimes I'll hook up the MPC and that's all I'm working on for the day, you know, and sometimes I'll play with the MS-20 and that's all I'm working on that day.
Show off.
But, yeah, something like that. So no, like to me, it's a lot about like it's not always conscious decisions to stay in a particular lane. Sometimes it's about like, okay, well, you just intuitively know that, okay, if I stay over here today, I'm going to make this style. If I stay over here today, I'm going to make this style. And sometimes I need to do that in order to get things done, especially if I'm working with other people. You know, because I don't want to be diving all over my studio while somebody else is here kind of waiting on me to just sculpt a sound or to get something flowing. Like if you're working with other people, I find that makes me work 10 times faster because I don't want to have them waiting around for me.
Right.
It's a funny point, or an interesting point, I mean, that you make about using the like 1 cent a day. I thought I was the only one who did that. Like, some days I will just pull up, say, the Maelstrom and Reason, and I'll just work on that for a week. Sometimes I'll just pull up Reason and say, how many beats can I make in an hour in Reason this week? So I will just pull up Reason by itself, spend an hour on the track, done. I might touch it up in a month or something. Next day, I'm doing something new. And every day I might use a different sampler, different synthesizer, different sound set, just to spur creativity.
Definitely, yeah.
I like the idea of the, you know, Bryce was talking about using iPad apps for like chord progressions, and when I went out to Seattle for the Creative Live, you know, I was talking with St. Joe at soundsandgear.com, and we were discussing different apps, and he was showing me the what is it, Chord Polypad, and I mean, you know, like I constantly am trying to learn more instruments, and I'm trying to learn better piano and get better. But sometimes it is nice to just have something like that where you can just instantly dive right in and say, okay, well, I want it to sound like this, and then you can say, all right, I want a blues progression in C, and boom, there it is, you know. Or so these days there's so many ways to get to where you want to be without wasting time. It's pretty amazing, because it really hasn't been that long of a period of time that we've had these kinds of workarounds.
Right.
It's really been like 10 years.
I mean, I feel like it's when I was using the MPC all the time, when I only had like an MPC and a turntable, and you know, and I was finding like ways of doing these workarounds, like what Mike was saying, as far as, you know, I wouldn't accept limitations and I would find a workflow that would get me around that problem. But it seems like it's a fairly recent invention that now we actually have a workflow around our musical instrumentation limitations.
Right.
As far as what we already know, you know?
Right,
so,
definitely.
I mean, yeah, you still want to understand theory and you still want to use your ears, but if you can't physically finger a proper, because not everybody can, you know, like if you can't properly finger a keyboard and properly, you know, finger up a guitar, now there's so many ways around this, you know, it's the accessibility is just amazing.
Yeah.
But on the other side, you know, and this is no hating, this is really, but listen to Lil Jon, okay? His keyboard skills are so limited. Okay, honestly, he plays like with 2 fingers on the keyboard. I saw a video when he was doing a beat, and he really played it with 2 fingers on the keys. But what comes out at the end was some really cool stuff. You know, he had some top 10 tracks using only 3 notes in a beat, and so he made his limitations also to an advantage and created something new from his limitations, which I think is really cool. But
limitations. He stayed in the strip club.
Well, I think also on top of that is the fact that, you know, some people they don't need to be where possibly they might think they need to be to create what they actually want to create. And I always kind of go back to like one of my favorite producers, RZA. when I listen to some of the stuff where after they've made it, after they've got all kinds of money, and after they have access to everything you could possibly think of, it's not always my favorite music from them. And I wonder, like, maybe if reeled it in a little bit and you kept with those limitations, those were the sounds that I personally really liked. And I'm not trying to pick on RZA, like, because that man's awesome, but I feel like it's indicative of a lot of people who they might do something like this and get all this gear, and they think that, okay, well, every track should sound like this or have that type of gear in it. When a lot of the times I'll make, like, I just got a track back that I had produced. Honestly, I had totally forgotten about it, but it just it's sent back to me, and we put it up on SoundCloud the other day, and it was a beat that I did using nothing but a turntable. I used Machine and a basic set of drums that I had recorded, and that was it. Like, I didn't use all my other gear. Like, I kept it very, very basic, and that kind of stuff works for the track that I was doing. Like, it works perfectly for that. And sometimes if you don't think as far as, okay, well, an oil painting doesn't need charcoal in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
exactly. An oil painting doesn't need pencils all over it.
Right.
So you don't always need all this extra stuff. And not just hardware, but I'm talking software too. Like, you don't always need to use every single thing that comes with Ableton or every single thing that comes in Fruity Loops to do what you want to do,
Right.
Sometimes using just that little bit is the best.
Yep.
It's like,
There's so much stuff in there now, you don't use all of it anyway.
We heard Lex Luger when he took over the music a couple years back.
Right.
All he had was Fruity Loops and that one sample. That was it. And people were trying to figure out what was he using, and he was like, "Yo, that's all I had. I had Fruity Loops and that one sim. That's all he had, and he just wanted to do what he was hearing on the radio. So being limited by, there probably wouldn't be a Lex Luger if he had access to a lot of gear. The fact that he did have gear kind of made him really dig into Fruity Loops and figure out how to make 16ths bar versus open note speed,
I think there's something about also, if you're trying to make something that sounds like it's on the radio, something to kind of remember about that is, well, sound designers and VST makers are trying to make products that will sell. So there's just so much out there already, like in the commonplace, like in pretty much any DAW that anyone is going to be using, there's already the vast majority of the sounds that you would need to create something that sounds like it's already on the radio, because that's the mass.
That's the market. Yeah,
exactly. So it's like, if you tell me that you have FL Studio, Logic, Reaper, really anything, any DAW. Matter of fact, I'll leave Reaper off that list because I don't know all the instruments in it. But any DAW that comes with an instrument package, chances are that instrument package has what is already in it that you need to create something radio ready.
Right. Yep.
It's like you get the guys I love the guys who they have every Waves plugin because they think they need it. No, you don't. A basic EQ, basic compression, a solid reverb delay. How much more do you really need than that?
Let me talk to Bryce and ask Bryce, because a lot of the hip hop that he makes isn't necessarily radio style hip hop, right? It's like you like to get into a little bit of that trippy kind of experimental hip hop vibe, right?
Yeah, there you go.
And I like to go down that same path. I'm a boom bap head, but so with that being said, a lot of that sound comes from sounds that you probably haven't heard on the radio before. But do you find that when you're creating your tracks, do you find a lot of it is starting with a unique sound, or is it?
It is starting with something unique, or just taking something and kind of just flipping it or doing something weird with it. Running it through a filter, or running it through like a crazy delay or something like that to get something unique, Now,
how were you making your sounds before you had everything that's behind you now? What was your kind of your thinned out setup?
I started with an MPC 25. Well, actually, I started back on a Sony PlayStation, but I won't take it back that far.
Okay.
Like my first piece of gear was an MPC. Yeah, music generator. There you go. But no, my first piece of gear was a MPC 2500, and I just started with that and records, and then from there I kind of I went through the whole let me go from hardware back to software. So I sold everything and got the MPD that you see behind me there, and Reason, and I just went that route, and I stayed there for a long time, and just vinyl and the synths and Reason, and then I started really getting into synthesis, and so that kind of took me down this whole other path. I started buying software synths, and then I got into Ableton, and so it's just been this weird just path that I've been going down, but it's all been kind of based around like that boom bap kind of sound, and just trying to be unique and be myself, but take these different paths, synths and trying to mix samples with synthesizers and so forth. But yeah, so but I mean it's true. It's like just starting with something, just one synthesizer sound and trying to take that core sound and make it something that is unique. That kind of just it fits what I'm feeling at the time, and I'll just take that.
Go back and listen to your old stuff. What's the biggest change that you hear in your own music from your old music to more current stuff?
I would say the biggest change is the mix. The mix. Mm-hmm. I think my ear is getting better as far as dialing in how I want the mix to sound. But as far as like the creative aspect, I think it's kind of stayed real similar. Maybe the style has changed a little more as I listen to other artists. Like like some of the guys like Fly Low and some of these other guys that are making that kind of music. I get inspired by those guys, and then I kind of I see myself using more synth than I used to, and just trying different stuff like that. But as far as really the most thing that really sticks out to me is the mix. The mixing is changed a lot.
So do you find yourself trying to make your do you find yourself trying to make your synths sound like you sampled them from a record?
I do.
Because I do that a lot. Like,
yeah.
I would say the vast majority of the stuff that I create, these days I prefer to sample as little as possible from actual record, unless it's something really rare, something really weird, something interesting that I'm having fun with. But I find that what I like to do is I like to make the sounds that I would have sampled on record had I found them. Mm-hmm. But then, because I have it here, I can actually make it. And then I try to run it through different processes to give it that slightly distant, slightly dirty, slightly vinyl sound.
Exactly.
Without just throwing, I'm not a fan of like just throwing a vinyl sound plug-in on there. Like I like to kind of go other routes as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, a little noise, a little bit of hum, stuff like that,
And that to me, that's almost like so the creative end piece of where I want to end up is almost a limitation also, because I know that I don't want to use completely bright everything because I'm darkening it up. I want it to sound like vinyl by the time I'm done. So in a way, that's also a limited workflow as well, because I don't want to do certain things because I want to end up here,
Exactly. Yep.
And that, can you bring up the point about sounding like sampling, or like make your synth sound like something you sampled? Didn't we all do that? I think we all kind of started off wanting to emulate something we've heard and trying to get that sound back. I sampled for a long time because I couldn't find anything that sounded the way I wanted it to. After I started messing with BSTs, then let's put it this way, I haven't sampled records in like 2 years outside of like maybe here and there for the sake of doing it, trying to be creative. I
go back and forth on that though, because at the same time, whereas it was hard to find records that sounded the way I wanted them to, I have an awesome vinyl collection now, and there's a lot of stuff that I could use just straight off, and it be what I kind of want. but at the same time, it's like then I do have that tinge of it's not completely mine, and I do want it to be 100% me and that kind of thing. So it's a give and take. It's a give and take of I want the records to sound like what I want them to sound like, but I want the vinyl to sound like the records that I would have sampled, and it's like it's this weird kind of like.
It is. There's something definitely to be said about creating something from the ground up on your own, from a synthesizer or whatever, and being able to say, you know what, this sounds like I would imagined it to. You know what I mean? And on the flip side, man, sampling vinyl is great. It's going in and yeah, it is finding something that nobody else would use, or even taking something that somebody else has used before and coming up with something totally different. That there's a lot of fun in that.
Exactly. There's a lot of creativity in knowing, hey, I took the sample somebody else used and let me reinterpret it.
Exactly.
There was before I think it was, I'm trying to remember what album it was. I want to say it was either the last or second to last Beastie Boys album that they put out. They went like balls to the wall and just used all the samples that they actually wanted to use in that record, which they hadn't done for many years because it's just gotten to be too expensive to make those kinds of records, clearing all those samples and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And they released, I can't remember the name of the record off the top of the head, but they released a record where they actually went ahead and they sampled anything that they wanted to. They didn't care, and then they cleared it, and they spent, I'm sure they spent more than an arm and a leg clearing those samples. But I listened to that stuff and I'm like, man, it's so good, and like I can go back and listen to like old Tribe Called Quest and Beastie Boys and whatnot, and listen to like the old stuff before people really started worrying about clearing samples, and I'm like, man, these beats were so awesome.
Yeah.
And then I listened to that one, I'm like, man, that's so awesome. But the only people who could actually do that and still have decent distribution are somebody that's so damn rich that they could actually do that. So it's like, in a way, a lot of us hip-hop people and even dance music producers that like to sample and all, we have to work inside of a limitation no matter what, because if you do sample just anything that you want to sample, it's gonna bite you in the butt. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, you're gonna end up paying that money. So in a way, it's like it's you have to use that limitation to your advantage at some point, or else you're gonna be screwed.
Yeah.
So what happened to me? Like I said, big on the Detroit sound. Like one of my favorite groups is Cybertron, the One Acting sound. When I about 2 years ago, I just really, everybody was sampling the exact same record. I mean, the genre is like almost 30 years. So I just finally said that I didn't want to be known for sampling no more. So I started learning to play everything. Like, I went and got Monarch and listened to every Cybertron album I could find and tweak Monarch till I was not just sampling, but I was able to recreate the John Robbie sound.
Nice.
Or I can recreate Man Parish, or like I would sit here and go, guys, I'm not like, oh, what'd you sample? Like, I didn't sample.
Yeah.
I'm playing it now. Which is when I got into the Arturia set. Once I got into the Arturia B collection with the Prophet, and I spoke with John Robbie over the on Facebook, and I asked him, what do you use? Like the Prophet 5. I spent like 3 months just tweaking Prophet 5 until it sounded like the old Soul Sonic Force stuff. You want to come and sit down? You want to be seated?
Hello, man.
All right, now can you go back in there? All right, go sit with your brother. Limitations, my friend. I embrace the shit.
Yeah, and that's that's another thing is like these days. I mean, if you look at the presets inside of Monarch that are already there, like Blue Monday's already in there. Like there's a lot of these famous songs that are already in there in the presets. So I mean, and that's the same kind of thing. It's like these days, I love sampling Bob James, but I try to not sample Bob James too much, like on any record that I actually want to put out, because, dude, everybody's sampled Bob James. Everybody's putting that out there. So it's like now I'm like this. Oh, I have a Rhodes. If Bob James can play it, I can figure it out. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like it might not be easy, and I might be limited in how crappy of a player I am currently. But you know, yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna mic it up. I'm gonna do what I can, and then I'm gonna try to emulate that sound that I would have just grabbed and done. Like I would have just sampled, you know, something off of one and been done. But now it's like, okay, well, I got to work within the limitation of my budget, which is certainly not clearing Bob James samples. You know.
It's the same for me. So I don't want to sample too much anymore because I always have the feeling like all the good stuff is used before. Okay, it's very hard to find a unique sample these days. I mean, maybe it's a little different in the States, but here in Europe, it's very hard to find rare records.
Some of the best vinyl I have came from Germany. Let me just tell you.
Okay, that's good, but we don't actually here in I'm only in a small village. We don't have record shops or stuff like that. You know, if I would travel to bigger cities, I probably would find some more stuff, but I can't go like hundreds of miles to find new records. And so I decided I do less sampling and try to play more myself. And now I'm on a point where triggering keys until it sounds good is not good enough anymore. So I decided to take some piano classes again. And my piano skills, so I can do exactly what I want.
Yeah, I heard all about your lessons, man. I heard you're doing real good.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah,
actually,
man.
I'm trained by Richard London, who was here on the show, and he's a great teacher. And
he's real good. He's real good.
Really, really good.
He is. I've been having him teach me some stuff too, because I got the Pro 2 coming. You know, we're talking about limitations, and I kind of hate to throw that out there, but it's on its way. It's on its way.
Hey, Bryce, I just want to let you know ahead of time, I specifically did not go into what's new in the studio since last. It's trying to be nice.
Yeah.
Go down to an hour. If we can talk about new gear, it'll be a 3-hour show.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it this time.
Kind of hard to go from new gear to limitations, you know.
But actually, my limitation at this time is Moog. They still don't send me the damn synth.
You still have not got the Sub 37.
It's been like a month.
You still got it on order though, Mike?
Yes, I got it on order, but they rescheduled it another 2 weeks later. Now.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what you need to do? You need to yell at them. You need to call them up specifically at their headquarters and yell at them. That's
I do it on the show here every
America.
No, you need to call them up, because I know certain people who piss and moan, and then next thing you know, their order is getting bumped up, which means your order is getting bumped down. So
there are actually no units in Germany at all at this time. So every shop is waiting for the first batch to arrive. So there's actually no chance.
Let me just say something. This is halfway off topic, but because I'm, like that, I can do this kind of thing. Let me just say, so Mike was talking about not being able to go to record shops to really get the vinyl that he wants, and of course there's people who have no issue with going the MP3 and YouTube route, which works, but it's not. We all know that it's just not the same as when you're actually dropping a needle and you can manipulate the record and all that. But I just want to say that my vinyl collection, a good 90% of it never once comes from record shops. I am a huge fan of traveling the country and hitting up flea markets and garage sales.
Me too.
So to me, that's real digging. Like, record shops to me are not digging. Like, that's like somebody already dug, and then you're getting what they left over. Like, to me, I'm like, no. I want to go out there and get the vinyl that the record shops don't even want to give you. You know what I mean? Like, so to me, I'm all about it. If you can find flea markets in your area, frequent flea markets often, and ask around. Let it be known that you're looking for records. Go around. you know, to garage sales, you know, that kind of thing. I'm a huge proponent of just making sure that people know that you're actually looking for. I've got an email list of different flea markets and things around, and vendors that go to different places around here that they know that when they come up on new records, they shoot me an email, and you know, boom, there it is. You know, so you can easily know when something, you know, you would be surprised at what people will try to throw away in their trash. And what a lot of the times happens is, say somebody dies, and they have a large collection of records that have been collecting dust in their basement. These records are getting picked up, ready for sale or to be thrown away, and then these people come through, they scoop them up, and then they take them to flea markets. That's where you get your deals.
Right.
So I always try, you know, you got to be careful as far as make sure you pull the record out of the sleeve, make sure the record that's in the sleeve is what you're looking at. You want to, you know, you're going to have to check for scratches and all that kind of good stuff, but that's where the real deals are. So I try to let people know.
Yeah, I have a couple local.
A few years back here in Germany as well. So I grabbed tons of records on flea markets, and it was all a steal. So my whole flat here was full of records. But today, when I go to a flea market, there are only vendors, and they try to charge you like $20 for a record. And
Wow.
I don't want to spend that much money on.
Wow, that's crazy.
That's
the record.
Speaking of that,
That's
my
insane.
production on vinyl was bought off Amazon, eBay, about for $90 in Germany.
Yeah, that's there's a lot of stuff that I've worked with and is working around here, and you'll see that a lot of that stuff is selling for crazy high prices, and especially like Mike said, man, Delaware hip hop sells for crazy money overseas, which is, you know, because we're a small state, but and it's rare, but yeah, like. A lot of that comes down to when you get into a situation where it becomes really common for people to be looking for records and the prices start driving high, you got to look around and you got to try to figure out where is this vendor getting his records from. I always try to chat them up, find out, oh yeah, so where'd you get these records from, blah blah blah, and you know, next thing you know, you're trying to get there before them. So I've had many days where we've gone out digging for records at 5 a.m. So, like right now, let me just give you a quick, for instance. I'm not going to go into the whole thing because it's too big to lift, but this is just off of the top. I haven't gone through these yet. This is a 45 set that I have to go through.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I got a bunch of those.
Yeah, and again, that's one of my digs from a flea market recently, where, you know, I went and I got that thing, plus I got a big thing like this of records, and I got them for dirt cheap, and I'm going through them. And so far, I found a couple of James Brown, I found a couple of Shy Lights, you know, a couple of interesting records on there so far. But again, not all of it's going to be usable. Sometimes you're going to have to go through. You're going to throw out some of it that's scratched, you know. But to me, that's way more fun. Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, I took you guys down a tangent. I had to do it.
No, that was good. That was good. Like,
good.
I did the same thing recently. I just went to a garage sale. I have a couple garage sales locally. Like, I tell the people, they're constantly doing garage sales. I tell them, hey, I'm interested in records, and every time I go by there, I get at least 200, 300 records for them. They have them ready for me, and I get them for like, you know, $20, $10, you know, and I just go through them, and like you said, Ken, there's you know, you find those gems in there, you know what I mean? But I just wanted to ask Aaron real quick, are you sampling? Do you sample? Like
Bites. I mean, again, like I don't
pre-made loop.
Like very very small bites. I mean, like this one release I did. It's basically this old Planet Rock song had I might like staff, like the orchestra hits.
Oh, okay.
The orchestra hits because I was able to get the Orc 5 sample now. So now I just play it on my own chord versus the Planet Rock everyone samples. Again, once I found out what that sample was, I went and found the sample, so I play my own orchestra hits now.
Okay.
Well, you have Contact, don't you? Why don't you use the orchestrators from Contact?
Actually, what I use for like my what is it? Nostalgia. An old zero G Rumpler years ago. They don't make it anymore, but you can buy the sound library. And this thing is massive. It was basically the sound library from the guy that just recently passed from Hollow Sound.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, he had one called Nostalgia, and I recommend that a lot. I mean, there's samples, so you're not actually getting the true waveforms, but it's like he just basically hit one note and sample from A and C, and you got the full keyboard saying. But yeah, I mean, not too much sampling. I do too much. I mean, yeah, like you say, I put a lot of my stuff on YouTube, so I don't want to get pulled down.
Mm.
Do you guys do you guys ever do any limitations like this right here?
Yeah, right.
Here? I hope you guys. This right here. I mean, you talk about limitations.
Yeah.
That's one of my most visited web pages. I visit that like at least once a month.
When I saw this, it really reminded me how fortunate we are today. I mean, you
Yeah.
look at all these edits. Every single one of those white pieces of tape is an edit.
Yep.
You know, I mean, you talk about limitations. That's some serious limitations right there. You know,
Serious.
but at the same time, look at how much creativity is involved in something like that.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
like you talk about a workaround. I mean, you know, that some of the coolest stuff comes from workarounds. So I think we're going to bring the show to a close, and so I wanted to say thank you to everybody who came out, and everybody who's on the show, and everybody who's watching live, and everybody who's going to YouTube it later on, and everybody who's going to listen to it as an audio podcast when we eventually download it and put it up. That needs to happen. But I am Flux of fluxwithit.com. I highly recommend you check out fluxwithit.com. I've been putting up more and more articles of just interesting synth nerdism and music stuff and, you know, all that kind of good thing. Also, I highly recommend you check out themachinewarehouse.com because right now there are Flux With It expansions on sale, so go check that out. Also, you know, you can check out Flux With It products on Big Fish Audio. I also did just finish a product with MVP Loops, so go check out Urban Vault, which is available exclusively at Guitar Center. So please go check out that. That's got some quite a lot of my sounds in it as well. And I'll pass it off to Mike.
All right, thanks guys for watching. And I want to mention one more thing. You can see this now.
Yes, definitely. The sound contest.
Yes, we got a sound contest going on in the Facebook group, and we have permission from Daniel Ivan, who is a great artist from, I think it's Spain. I'm not 100% sure, but he's a really cool guy, and he gave us permission to use one of his videos. And so go over there, check it out, grab like a minute from the video, and do your own beat or own music score under the video. And you can win some really cool sound packs from Mod Audio. I also did a review on a sound pack from them, so check out papbangers.com/YouTube for the latest reviews and more videos. And yeah, that's it so far. I pass it over to Kev.
Hey, thanks everybody for watching the show, taking a part of it. We really do appreciate you. Check out KevWestBeats.com because if you haven't seen it yet, I did release my electronic EP that I've been talking about doing for months. The EP is called Your Girl Wants Kev. It's on KevWestBeats.com. Also check me out, YouTube.com/KevWest and YouTube.com/Your Girl Wants Kev if you're interested in my gaming content. Let me pass it off to Bryce.
Yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you guys next time. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Why don't you tell them your SoundCloud? Okay, so I see it on there, but just in case.
Yeah. You can listen to my music at SoundCloud/Upright. We also have a EP we released on Bandcamp. It's the Blend Beat Project.
Very
spelled
good
just
stuff,
like it
by the
sounds.
way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So yeah, you can check out those, and that's it for me. Until next show, I pass it over to Aaron.
Thanks for having me out, guys. Appreciate it. Real informative. Embrace the shake. If you want to check some of my music, very limited equipment, what I've done to see I'm a man of my stands behind my music. My website is blacksunaudio.bandcamp.com. That's where I put all my releases, so you can listen, or you can definitely download and buy. I appreciate all the buys. It helps me support kids because they want to stay out of my room. Just pass it back to the boys.
All right, guys. So this has been the Producers Hangout, episode number 8, and I want to thank you again. And peace.
Peace.
Later.